Wei, so many people live their lives on autopilot, repeating the same patterns, chasing success, and yet feeling drained or stuck. From your perspective, what's really going on beneath the surface when people get caught in these hidden loops, and
Yeah.
why so hard to break free?
Yeah. That's a great question, Daniel. Loops is a phenomenon that happens in nature, with or without human intervention. If you look into concepts around chaos theory, right? Out of chaos theory, there eventually produces a pattern. When human beings are stuck in a loop, it's just a pattern that has been developed over time out of the chaos of existence. The pattern allows us to be safe, allows us to survive, because nothing can fully survive long term in a constant state of chaos. So when human beings find loops and patterns that they find, whether or not it's optimal, it doesn't matter. It as long as you're able to survive. And one of the prime directives of the human unconscious mind is preservation of self. So whether or not it's optimal almost becomes a secondary goal. The primary goal is, can I survive? And because human beings are such amazing, adaptable machines on the planet, we adapt. And we adapt to a point where we adopt it as part of normal, right? And what is normal? And so when we are now challenged with a different insight of, you can actually have something better, the conflict arises with the unconscious mind goes, well, no. Well, but we know this will keep us alive. So the question then comes up, say, do you want to just survive, or do you want to thrive in this lifetime?
That is one of the most fascinating things I find out about the human brain in the
Yeah.
last, whatever, 2 years that I've been doing this work. Because you would think that from an evolutionary standpoint, that our brain's job is to help us thrive, but it's just to help us survive, it's to keep us
Mm-hmm.
safe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so frustrating because it feels like that our nervous system hasn't evolved to modern society where everything is scary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're not being chased by lions, we're not
Yeah.
being kicked out of our tribe, and people feel, I think, dissatisfied with their life and not understanding why. They feel sort of like they might chase external success, they might achieve external success, but feel stuck internally. It's like when that happens, and people have thrown the term like self mastery.
Mm-hmm.
What does true self mastery really look like, especially when you have to take in consideration the controlling the mind and the emotions,
Mm-hmm.
given the fact that our subconscious mind, as you said, is there to prevent us from doing anything because at the end of the day, it's trying to keep us safe.
Yeah, yeah. Self mastery is a very sought after terminology, to a point where it's become kind of a buzzword, so that people start tuning it out. It's like self mastery, and it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I tried that. It's like, how did you try it? And you're right. There is that reptilian brain that is kind of a vestige. It's left over from our evolution, right? And it's there, in extreme situations as a backup to keep us safe. The fight or flight mechanism is necessary in extreme situation, but in this day and age, you're right, very few of us encounter those extreme situations. And yet, in an interest of maintaining that so it doesn't get what do you call underutilized, we use it inappropriately for everyday, what we like to call first world problems. Now we're in fight or flight mode again, so it's constant stress, right? So when we talk about self mastery, especially in my world with our technology, it's about how do you discern between nurtured behavior patterns that go against your nature, right? When we talk about self mastery, every human being is designed in a very unique and specific way. Until our technology has been around, prior to that, it was always kind of like a trial and error thing. You kind of like a shot in the dark, right? But now, because we can now quantify that, what we're looking at is we're empowering people with the ability to discern between nature versus distorted nurture.
Hmm.
Why I call it distorted nurture? Because there's always saying nurture versus nature, right? But
Hmm.
sometimes we've been nurtured to our natures, and that's okay. Those
True.
nurture dynamics are perfect, right? But as we all know, Our parents doing the best they can, society and culture doing the best they can. Sometimes we're nurtured against our nature, and then we adopt it even though it's not the most natural thing for us, which then leads to burnout, what then leads to less than optimal existence and living conditions, right, for ourselves. Self-mastery comes as how do you then discern between what serves your nature and what distorted nurtured behavior patterns do we now unsubscribe from and release and let go. When we start to be able to discern that way, that's when self-mastery starts to truly present itself and allows you to really lean into what you are versus just who you are that's dictated by experiences and traumas and society and culture and rhetoric, right? And that's how, in our camp, how we define self-mastery to be.
I find this fascinating because I do believe, and I was one of those people. I think most people, and I was part of them for a long, long, long time. We tend to confuse these survival strategies, and it could be from even the human brain is so fascinating that let's say that you and I were the same age, we grew up together, our parents said something to us at the same time, you took it as something productive or something that will help you grow, and I took it as a trauma, like a story that my brain created
Mm-hmm.
around something, and that started creating this loop. And imagine that those who are overachievers that tend to burn out all the time, or the people pleasers who everyone steps on them, or the perfectionists who never does anything unless success is guaranteed. I think people confuse these things for their personality. It's like, no, this is just who I am, without understanding that that was a tiny moment in your life that your brain created a story to make you understand it and to keep you
Mm-hmm.
safe.
Mm-hmm.
And now you took that as, well, this is my badge of honor. This is who I am. And the moment you try to go against your identity or your concept of self, then
Mm-hmm.
your subconscious mind and your nervous system say, hey, no, we are not doing this over here. Who the heck are you? No, we're just going to stick to this thing. And
Right.
to me, it's like, because you have so much experience with this and you have worked with countless of people, how do you even help them start to identify those? Because people can be very stubborn, and it can be, you can face a lot of pushback from their nervous systems, like, okay, we don't want to change. How you
Mm-hmm.
crack them and say, hey, this thing that you think is what is who you are, it's not. That's who you became to survive,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't have to be the full you. You can just take the wisdom from being an overachiever and have the
Yeah.
work ethic, or being a perfectionist and look at every detail, but you don't have to let them drive. They can just
Mm-hmm.
ride a shotgun, and then you can take that and move forward. How do you help
Yeah.
people just see that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I like, the what we do is we create a distinction between who a person is versus what that person is, right? The who you are is defined by primarily psychometric behavior patterns, experiences, things that we were nurtured, whether it be distorted or natural nurture, that people then define, this is who I am, right? Like you're saying, this is just who I am, right? And it's kind of what we were saying in the very beginning, where it's a pattern that we've adapted to. Whether or not it's the best pattern, it doesn't matter. It's just safer to say, yeah, well, that's just who I am. Take it or leave it, right? What we then have distinguished between is who, but what a person is how you naturally came into the world, which we can now define. So what you are now allows you to compare to who you are and be able to start to say, okay, well, this is why every time I try to be this who, I don't feel good. I'm not energized by doing this. It's not like I get energy from being a perfectionist. It's just who I am. Well, that should be your clue right there. Because fundamentally, it's simple. How you know that you are in alignment with your true nature is when you behave in the patterns or do the activities that are in alignment with your nature, you actually stay energized or become even more energized. When you are behaving in a way that goes against your nature, it's just the universe at work here. You feel depleted, you feel exhausted, you feel that there's an over output, there's an extreme output of energy that depletes you to a point where now you're burning out. right? Even though you could say, this is who I am, it says, okay, so who you are, does it make you feel good? No, but this is just who I am. It's like, no, that's not how you're designed. Everything else, I mean, every application, appliance, vehicle that we see in the modern world has an optimal way of operating, right? Like the Hummer is not meant to go on the racetrack and race against Porsches, right? Lamborghini isn't meant to race off-road against Hummers, right? Can you do that? 100%. But is that the most optimal use of that vehicle? Human beings are the same way. So the distinction is, what are you versus who you are? And then if you lean into the natural state, then you will just feel more energized. And that's the easiest way to calibrate and break away from behavior patterns that do not serve you. So that you no longer say, well, that's just who I am. It's like, well, do you feel good? No, then that's not who you are, right? Let's talk about what you are. So that way you can start to create some incremental shifts in the direction that best serves you.
Huh. You know, I just as we were talking off camera, I said some of the things might seem like common sense, but common sense is not common. And everything that you said to me is like, yeah, that makes sense. I understand perfect. I understood everything perfectly. And I'm trying to figure out a way how to just break it down in ways that people say, okay, now it clicks. Now I get it. And you mentioned alignment, and to me, alignment. What I found alignment through also intuition. It's just that whisper that sparks something very mild, but at the same time brings some fear, which is the ego trying to keep you in the familiar. So when you have those two things clashing, then you are on the right path. In terms,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I might need to follow that, but I do believe that to reach the level to know what we are, know who we are,
Mm-hmm.
but what we are, as you said, it requires a higher level of awareness and a
Mm-hmm.
higher level of consciousness, which I come to believe that is becoming harder and harder for people
Yeah.
to achieve. To
Yeah.
me, the portal for awareness and consciousness, if you want to call it that way, is through curiosity. I've been a very curious person in a non-judgmental way about myself and the
Mm-hmm.
world. But if are there any other techniques that you have helped people, or even yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or anybody, that how can somebody understand that in a much simpler way, that
Yeah.
okay, between who I am and what I am, and
Mm-hmm.
how to gain the awareness to even discover that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there. You're right.
Mhm.
And with the advent of social media and the popularity of digital media and AI even, it's become noisier and noisier and noisier. And so it's even harder and harder to discern between all the noise and find that one signal that you can kind of lean into and latch onto. And that's a lot of why my life's work has led us to our company and our technology. It why we're so passionate about it, it is literally a tool, a free tool that people can use to, like you're saying, immediately start to see and be validated. And that's the beautiful thing about what our technology does. It validates people. It doesn't really show somebody, oh, I didn't know that was me. It's more like, I knew it. I knew that was my natural me. And because it's not a human being, and the reason why we moved it away from our consulting and our coaching methodology into a technology, is because there's something about the objective nature of technology that people have an easier time to receive it versus just another human being telling them that, oh, this is you. It's like, yeah, there's always that, well, that's his opinion, right? Now, our technology that's based on physics, science, that's the only patented human assessment technology in the world because it's not based on psychology. It objectively quantifies and gives every human being on the planet access to their natural blueprint of self, the way nature designed you to be. No two human beings get the exact same blueprint. If there's 8 billion people on the planet, 8 billion different results, all you need to do, take the assessment one time, and it actually gives you the first steps to discern between nurture and nature. And then that human being in that moment independently can start to make some shifts and changes and feel it and feel the difference when they start leaning into their nature for the first time, sometimes for the first time ever in their life, right? And so that's over. So I've been in this game for optimizing human for over 30 years now. And 10 years ago, I came across this technology. I met the creator of the technology, and that's how we came together and we launched HumanOp, right? But prior to that, it's like what you're saying. It was like a moving target. We're having these conversations. We're helping people navigate things, and it was kind of it wasn't very long, but compared to how it is now, it was a long, drawn out process to kind of shift through all the flotsam and the jetsam and the noise just to get to that one piece. Like, oh, there's that aha, there's that root cause. Now with the tool, we get there faster. And not only that, if we can't touch them, at least the technology can touch them and they can actually start figuring things out on their own. Then they find someone like you to kind of fine tune that, go even deeper, be able to use the modalities that you bring to the table to help them untether themselves, because now they see the difference, but they can't untether from that nurtured state. And that's where people like you come in and say, let me untether that for you, since you know the difference already. The heavy lifting is done. Let's do the fine tuning, right? And that's kind of how we do it in our camp. And I'll tell you this, Daniel, I used to do breakthrough sessions that would last 10, 11, 12 hours. Those VIP days would be all day. Ever since that technology has come into my life, it has the longest breakthrough session has been maybe 4 hours. Sometimes we don't even need a breakthrough session. I just have a few sessions with them in person and they're done. They've let go, and they've been able to kind of untether from those old patterns.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack, and I'm fascinated by your answer, because I can go to so many different ways.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start with something that came to mind first. I will address I'll put here in a box the breakthrough sessions, like 4 hours, 12 hours, and all that, because I have other questions around that. But you said something around not using psychology. And if I go with my own beliefs and my understanding now, people can take this with a grain of salt, because again, once again, this is my perception, this is how I see the world, is that what I've discovered, at least for myself, is what I am comes a lot from my essence, right? It's just what I'm meant to do in this world. There are things that I cannot explain that I'm doing right now. And just one quick example is I grew up with a heavy stutter. I used to probably stutter for 20, 25 years, got bullied a lot. I wouldn't speaking from anybody. It would be hard for me even having conversations with people, because I would get stuck, all of that. And
I would not even know that.
Yeah.
By how you are right now. Good job.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And at the beginning of this year, because I follow my intuition, I joined Toastmasters. Something told me, it's like, hey, there's something there that you probably need to explore, because then that's what led me to launching a keynote career. But the first couple times I gave a speech there, it came so natural. Like, I was already natural speaking, never nervous, even though I had so much bad experience in schools by just not being able to speak in front of other people, not being able to memorize anything. And I'm like, okay, how come last time I gave a presentation was in whatever 2012, and now 2025 I'm just doing all of this, no reps, no nothing, and I've become so much better so quickly without really putting that much effort. Those kind of things I wasn't able to explain. And then I just realized, well, this is probably how I would deliver my message, or my purpose, if you want to call it, my destiny, however you want to call it in this world. Now, why I'm bringing these things? Because you said that you don't use a psychology. How do you find out through other markets, if you go even through the spiritual realm and all of that, who a person or what a person is, when it's almost like very unique? How can a person discover that when you don't take account or in consideration anything related to psychology?
Great question. So to answer that, one of the best ways is to kind of talk about, one of my co-founders, well, there's four of us. One of the co-founders is the one that invented the technology. Her name is Dr. Zana Hackett. Genius, PhD, blah, blah, blah. over 20 years ago, um, she was observing the way human beings use different tools to understand each other. Psychological tools, MBTI, DISC, MMPI, whatever, right? And she noticed, yeah, all of them are based on psychology. They're based on psychometrics, which, again, better than nothing, better than not doing anything at all. But it's also calibrating on the part of human beings that is the most volatile side of human beings. Think about it. Our perspectives and opinions can change on a dime. We have a traumatic experience, or we stub our toe and it's throbbing all day. And if we go take a psychometric test that day, what does life look like? Life sucks right now because my toe hurts.
Lens
And then
changes.
it will skew, right? And we know that. And that's, those who are really good at coaching, they understand the lens and the filters, and we spend a lot of time disabling those filters, right? But then other filters come in. So it's very volatile. And so then she posited the question, well, okay, if we want to calibrate on, if we want to help assess human, why not calibrate on something that changes the least over time? That's when she said, well, what part of human beings changes the least over time? It's the part that says, if I forgot your name, Daniel, but I see your face, I will still know that I've met you before and I interact with you. I may not remember the language or the word or whatever the case may be, but I recognize you, our physicality. So the way I like to describe it is this. When you look around any room of people that you're in, notice every human being looks different. Nature, from the beginning of time, gave us all the clues we needed to understand what we each are. So, modern language, which is what psychology has relied on tremendously, has only been around for, well, not only, but it's been around for 50,000 years, modern language as we know it today, right? Now, human beings have been around for 2 million. So the question is, what did we do 1.95 million years without modern language? We did what everything else in nature did. We looked into nature, and through whatever grunts and clicks and gestures, we figured out how to tribe effectively with those that resonated with us, and how to not tribe with those that are dissonant with us based on our physical structure. When they laid country lines down, that's not what dictated everybody looking similar to each other. We were already tribing that way. And then when they laid down the country lines, we just kind of accentuated that because we just stayed within our country lines in the tribes that we were already doing. Now, the beautiful thing about modern language, though, not to discount it, even though Greek philosophers has laughed at humanity, saying, man invented language to lie to ourselves and others, so it's funny. But what we've done then is and I love what Dr. Zana says all the time when people say, Dr. Zana, this is your technology. And she goes, no, not really. I've only figured out how to translate what nature's been telling us since day one. But now we have the powerful tool of language to add more precision and efficiency in how we communicate what we see. So instead of grunts and clicks, we use the versatility of language to describe what nature's been telling us since day one. This is the foundation of what makes our technology so powerful, and that's what made it patentable, because it's based on physics, it's based on math, it's based on nature, so everything is quantifiable and uniquely quantifiable based on how everybody uniquely shows up in this world. And so that's to answer your question, how are we able to separate, to not lean and rely so heavily on the psychological side, and really anchor everything that we understand about each other on the physical side, on the physics of what it is, of gravitational force, nuclear force, electromagnetism, all those different kind of philosophy, those components of physics is what allows us to understand and discern between the nature of what we are versus who we are.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around and trying to understand at a deeper level exactly how we use. Math I understand to some extent. I don't understand the math, but then math can solve a lot of problems. I get that. On the physics side and all of that, I'm trying to understand how each person. We understand that each person is different. Even when you have a conversation with someone, you might have similarities with others. You might feel resonant with some people, and that's how we just click with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems since seems like you guys have, obviously, as you mentioned, a free assessment on your website and all of that. People have to go there and answer questions.
Correct.
Based on that, do you think that the answers, and I don't know the question because I haven't taken it yet, but do you think that it's based on consciousness, those answers come from consciousness rather than from our prefrontal cortex that is already conditioned by psychology, society, culture, and all of that?
It's actually based on answers you can't lie about. What color are your eyes? What color is your
Okay.
hair?
Okay.
You know, the physical, the built in into our technology and the assessment is a built-in lie detector. I'm not going to answer. If I answer the
Yeah.
question that my eyes are blue, yeah, my answer is going to be all wackadoodle.
Okay.
Right. And the minute any of our practitioners look at that and look at the human being behind it, it's like, you totally lied.
Yeah, clearly.
Right. Because the foundation is based on how we physically show up. Think of it as like this. I don't know if you know anything about sound, speakers, and audio dynamics, but I'm a total audiophile. I have like over 40 different microphones. I just love the way sound dynamics are. But one of the things if you notice that if you take two speaker cones that are exact same speaker,
Mm-hmm.
but you put one in a small, tiny box with really thick, dense wood, and you put another one in a thinner wood, but a bigger box, and you play the same sound and you play the same music, right? It's going to sound different, right?
Hmm.
That's why people invest in sound systems and speakers, and they talk about the acoustics of all the different things and the material of the container and everything like that, right? Think of human beings the same way. We can all be taught the same thing, but depending on our physical vehicle, we're
Container.
going to express differently, right? So as an example, okay, is it okay if I use you as an example?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So based on what I see, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you have access to a specific trait called the sympathetic trait. The sympathetic trait is where the natural born healer lives. It's the part of you, how you physically naturally show up in the world. It's naturally disarming by nature. And what I mean by that is you've probably experienced this in your adult life, meeting people for the very first time, and within 5-10 minutes, they feel safe enough to share their entire life story with you. And you're like, whoa, I just met you.
I know. I said bring it on. I mean, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's part of your nature. You are naturally designed that way to be that what we call a natural born healer. You naturally disarm as long as you lean into that part of yourself, because sometimes again people can be nurtured against that and they put up weird walls that prevent people from leaning in even though they want to, right? But because you create a space and you're leaning into owning that part of you, it's a natural way for you to be. So if you go into any kind of healing modality, whether it be coaching or anything else, it's a natural fit for your nature. Now, because it's so laid back and disarming by nature, that part of you is also where procrastination lives. It's the part of you where you'll naturally be so laid back, I don't have to do this now, that type of thing. And because that's kind of like the trade-off of being naturally disarming, right? Because it's laid back, it's relaxed by nature. It's not super active, it's more passive. But again, this is just one part of you. There's other parts of you that are definitely more active, but this part of you is literally where people will feel safe in your presence and feel like you can hold space for them to actually heal.
That is, well, you're right in terms of how part of my personality, which once again, I need to take the assessment because in my mind it's okay, if I answer questions that I cannot lie about, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're a human being
Mm-hmm.
with 30 years of experience and you can, just like I'm able to do it at a probably lesser degree because of the experience gap.
Mm-hmm.
Already read somebody when their
Mm-hmm.
person's being authentic and say, okay, I've seen this pattern before, similar to other people that have the
Mm-hmm.
same whatever nature
Uh-huh.
um, uh, gift or trait, if you want to call it
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand if another human tells me that, and I still, I guess, in my brain, so, okay, if I cannot use any psychological or any questions around psychology, and I can use things, only questions that people cannot lie about or shouldn't lie about, how can I
Hmm.
even discover all of that? So, I mean, to me, this is not a question for you to answer. It's just fascinating. I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand at a much deeper level. But since we're in this topic, remember that I put in the box about 12 hours and 4 hours. I wonder how it is, at least for you in your experience, because, well, side note, I can hold space for people and the depth because I don't know if this was by nature, that I became the person I wish I had. And I became it just I never felt safe sharing because I felt that people couldn't meet me at the depth that I was hoping, and I always felt misunderstood. But then I created this persona, or just out of doing it for myself, now I can do it for the people that I wish. Okay, this is who I wish I had when I was growing up,
Hmm.
or this is the kind of friend
Hmm.
I wish I
Hmm.
had, but I don't. So I'm providing that for other people. But one thing that I've discovered around identity, or even breaking all loops, or going from who you used to be to what you are, there
Hmm.
is a level of resistance from, I would say, our subconscious mind and our nervous system. And there's this, I didn't know this until I experienced myself. There's this grief that we go through because it's almost like, okay, this part kept me safe. This part
Hmm.
is just who I am. And detaching is so hard. What I was able to do in order not to freak out my whole nervous system was, okay, let me start building a foundation of the person that I am, or what I'm supposed to become, or who I always were before my brain created all these stories. And once I had like a solid foundation, now I can step into this new identity. But leaving this old identity behind, even though it didn't serve me anymore, came at
Right.
a big loss. And I realized we don't just grieve our losses, but the parts of ourselves we leave behind. When you go through this intense breakthroughs and with your VIP clients, whether it's 12 hours, 4 hours, or even
Hmm.
just a few sessions, how do you navigate those with them, because they're not used to that, and it's so hard for the human brain, or at least the prefrontal
Yeah.
cortex, to understand what's happening.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. You're right. There a lot of times when people let go of versions of themselves in the past that they used to survive, and we hit the root cause and realize that no longer serves you anymore, it's time for an operating system upgrade. Yeah, they got so used to living with I had one client, she sat there and when we were done, she had shed her tears and everything like that, but she had this beautiful glow after we were done with the breakthrough. And I said, how do you feel? I said, like, I feel good, but I feel like there's this hole. There's like something's missing. And it doesn't feel bad. It just feels like it's gone. And I feel kind of sad that it's gone. It's like, yeah, you've lived with that part of you, though whether or not it serves you now, it doesn't matter. But you lived with that part of you for a long time. It's like living with that toxic family member, and finally they move out, and you're just like, well, it's kind of sad because I learned how to live with this person, but then here we are. It needed to happen, right? And a lot of it's like that. When I do these breakthrough sessions, and it's a specific modality called mental emotional release therapy. What it does is, I love what you're saying, it gets to the root cause. And a lot of times what locks the root cause deep in the catacombs of the unconscious mind are what I call the five negative horsemen, right? Negative emotional horsemen. It's like powerful negative emotions that have multiple derivative of anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, that we've layered on top of that one experience that started it all, so that it keeps it in place. When we remove those layers, those filters of negative emotions around it, and we look at the root cause event, whenever it happened way back when, as it is, if it is time for an operating system upgrade, we'll look at it like it's the news. I was like, oh, that totally doesn't mean what I thought it meant when I was like 2, right? So that means I can release that. And like cutting the head off a snake, all related events that you experience in life that were interpreted in a way, made meaning of, to support that root cause belief, it all gets released when that happens, amazing things happen. One, they feel that loss, but then all of a sudden the filters disappear. Colors seem brighter. Music, I had a guy who loved music, and he says, "Wait, I listened to this song after he had a breakthrough." He goes, "I listened to this song that I listen to every day to help me relax. And I was hearing instruments and sounds I'd never heard before." And he goes, "Why is that?" "Because you've been living with filters that affected all your senses, just so that it can continue to keep this root cause belief that no longer serves you alive." The interesting thing about belief systems that human beings have, they're like living entities within us. And so in order to perpetuate and maintain that belief system as part of our way of navigating life, it needs to be fed. How does it get fed? It gets fed by the way you interpret experiences you're experiencing life every single day. And the meaning that you make on an event most likely will feed a belief. Whether or not that belief serves you or not, as long as it's there, it's desiring to stay alive by helping you make certain interpretations and perspectives on your experiences in life so that it continues to feed that belief, limited or not. It still needs to be fed, right?
You
And
know,
so that's how that all works on a deep unconscious level.
I love that you shared the example of this guy with the music because I've only related that to our site, and let me give a little bit of context for people who are listening. I've been obsessed with neuroscience in the over the last year or so, and especially with our reticular activating system. That's how is what controls our real, what shapes our own reality. And
Yeah,
my understanding, based on some studies, our senses, all of our senses, our touch, our taste, our hearing, our sight, our smell, all of
yeah,
that,
everything.
they collect roughly 11 million bits of information per second, but our prefrontal cortex can only process 50.
Right.
And for a brain and because 99.9% of what we gather gets filtered out, our brain needs to be efficient and only showing what is important, what it believes is important, which is our own limiting belief, our own stories, and the narrative that we carry.
Yes.
And just as you can start, typical example, once you start saying, hey, well, if I'm thinking about a red card now, I'm going to just see a bunch of red cards because now my
Right.
brain thinks it's important. I only processed that or knew those type of examples with the sight, never with the hearing. And I want, just because how your narrative completely changed, now your brain starts picking up some other things that you might not even be aware of, that okay,
Mm-hmm.
this now goes with the new narrative.
Right. Right.
And once I'm sure that you have read, if not, is something that a book that everyone should read, the Four Agreements.
Mm-hmm.
and
For
and
Don
the
Miguel Ruiz.
Yes, fascinating book because it's basically say that we are quote unquote spellbound by words, whether something that we
Mm-hmm.
told ourselves or something that we heard, as you said, the distorted nature based on the nurture that we got from our parents, and how once we are able to dissolve that conversation in our head, to dissolve that belief, things change radically. But is in that moment, if you're, let's say if somebody cannot work with you or somebody doesn't have a coach, somebody else in their life, how they even become aware of things that are in the subconscious mind, because at the end of the day they're not aware of it because they're subconscious. How do you even realize, well, maybe this is not true? How can I bring it back to the conscious mind and then dissolve it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's those who do the work have come to, a lot of them come to challenge the constructs of reality, all the time, right? The easiest place to begin for people who want to start to become more self-aware is to get in the habit of deconstructing the moment. Okay. There is a refined version of the mental emotional release therapy that I came up with that is easier for people to kind of just pull out and use really quick. I call it emotional release protocol. My students have over the years affectionately called ER protocol because you pull it out in emergencies because it helps you kind of pull away from the moment, or like put a scratch a needle on the record for the moment, right? And one of the most powerful questions, and so where to begin is to start with a challenging moment, right? That you're triggered and you're not feeling good, because those are the easiest moments to kind of challenge the reality of things, right? Like Mark Twain said, I've had tens of thousands of problems in my life, most of which were never real.
Yeah,
Because
fair,
it's
true.
all within the concepts of our mind, right? And so one of the most powerful tools of language that we can use is what we were raised to use in school. There's why, there's what, there's when, there's who. I'll tell you right now, when it comes to personal development work and things that you ask yourself, why is like the worst word to ask. Like, why did I do that? Well, if you knew, you wouldn't do it, right? So, but if you do answer it, you're probably lying to yourself anyway, because if you knew, you would have fixed it already. You wouldn't even ask yourself why. So when it comes to personal development, personal growth, the question why makes you lie. So just remember that. Now, the question to ask, the word to use is simply this, and just use it recursively. And what I mean by that is the first question of this ER protocol is, okay, now you're triggered, now you're looking at an issue. How you disconnect it from it is asking this question is, how is that a problem? The key word is how. How, because of how academic system is and how we've been raised, it automatically triggers an unconscious calibration to deconstruct, right? Because the word how forces us to kind of iterate out, okay, now let's look at a sequence. Asking yourself, how is that a problem? Not what is the problem, or why is that a problem? How is that a problem? Instructs the unconscious mind to go into deconstruct mode. And if you get used to asking this on situations to help disrupt and keep it from slipping deeper into a worse state than it is, it's like, okay, wait, how is that a problem? Specifically for me, how is that a problem? Well, it's a problem that they insulted me. Okay, great. And then you do it recursively. Well, how is it a problem that they insulted you? What does that mean? It's like, well, if they insulted me, it means they don't like me. It's like, okay, how is it a problem they don't like you? Well, then I won't have any friends. Well, how's the problem you have any friends? Well, then that means I'll be alone. And how's the problem you're alone? But then I'll just die sad. It's like, now the real problem is not whatever they did or said. The real problem is they triggered a sequence of events that feeds a deeper belief of saying, the true problem is that I think I'm going to die alone. And that person just validated it by saying something weird to me that has nothing to do with their inner belief, but this is how our unconscious mind works. And it all starts with one simple question. How is that a problem? This is an empowering question that empowers you the ability to master the moment, to deconstruct what is happening right in front of you. Should you have the courage, the key thing is courage, to step into that. Like with anything else, if you are looking to create change, you must be willing to do something you've never done before. And if this is something that you've never done, that I challenge you to challenge yourself and say, how's that a problem? And hold yourself accountable to owning the fact that somehow you've made what is being presented in front of you into a problem for you. So take ownership of that, because if you take ownership of that, that means you can deconstruct that. That means you can make sure that problem never happens again, nobody else. This eliminates the chance for you to be a victim, to be helpless, to be oh, this is just how things are, by simply asking, well, how is that a problem for me personally? Nobody else. How is it a problem for me? Because I'm obviously making it a problem on some level.
First of all, that was very insightful. One thing that I've always believed, well, not always, but lately, in the last whatever 5 years or so, is that triggers are gifts, just information to
Yes.
help us see where we're not free. There's something there.
Yeah.
Now, when you were describing the question of how, I felt like that kid that solved a math problem using the wrong process, but it had the right answer, right? Because, yeah, it's like,
Right.
and the professor's like, I don't know how you got the right answer, but sure, I mean, the whole process was wrong, but you got the right answer.
Yeah.
Because I've always used actually the why question, but the why in a different way. It's like, I wonder why I'm getting triggered, or I wonder why that made me feel that way. I wonder why, but I guess it's the wonder why. And even
Yeah.
when people have other behaviors, like, okay, why did that happen? But not necessarily, not like, oh, I need an answer. Why is the universe, doing this? But what was the reason behind it? And
Yeah.
I've never used the how, but I'm going to try to use the how. I see I might just get other insights. But yeah, all of that, even that deconstruction that you did of, well, that person insulted me. What does it mean, or why I'm getting this? I got to the bottom of it a couple of years ago. Very similar example, but with the why. I was like, okay, I guess I'll take that. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that for what I do understand, because way back in the day, I used to go to to a therapist, and she was like, "We are so obsessed with why. You shouldn't asking the why." It's like, well, but I guess because most people would come from a place of victimhood, like, why is this happening, rather than I'm curious. I'm actually
Yeah.
I want to understand
Yeah. I think the
why
wonder
they.
before the
Mm,
why
mm,
is the wonderment piece.
mm,
And curiosity, you're right, is the first step. It's the precursor to the how. If you can't get to the how right away,
mm,
absolutely be curious. Find it interesting what you're observing about yourself or whatever the situation is. The minute you find it interesting, it makes it a lot easier to slip into the next step, which is, well, how is that a problem for me then? How did I decide in this moment that that is an issue, right? Especially those who road rage, like, how did I decide that someone I have no idea who it is, a complete stranger, is now triggering the heck out of me? How do I even know to do that because of what they did?
And sometimes, by the way, giving that example, and sometimes not even about that person, what that person triggered you. And I think so. To give a funny story, kind of funny story now, but how I become aware of people's behaviors. I experienced, it was on a random weekend. I experienced something that made me very, very upset. But then it was out and about, and I couldn't just release my anger. It's like something that physically happened to me. It's like, okay, this sucks. Well, at that point, I had sprained my ankle. I was training for a half marathon. I couldn't
Oh,
train for another. So I was
yeah.
so mad. And this one really got to me. So I was just walking at the grocery store, and there was this person very slow in front of me, and I just wanted to yell, and I had to control myself because I was like, so I needed to release that anger. And then that's when I realized, oh, a lot of people who are out there yelling and screaming that they have no patience is they're just having that pain inside that they don't know how to release it, and the only way that they can do it
Yep.
is through other people. And that
Yeah.
I found that fascinating by just discovering, like, wait, why am I acting this way? Why suddenly I just want to punch this person for no
Yeah.
reason whatsoever? But yeah,
Right. So in the instance, if you say, well, how is it a problem that this person is walking slow? Sometimes when you just ask that, it sounds
yeah,
ridiculous. It's like the
yeah,
person's just walking slow. How is that a problem? And then it allows you to kind of like, it's kind of like an archaeologist, right? When
mm-hmm,
you get a trigger, you find a knuckle, but you don't know what it belongs to. It's just a knuckle. So when you start digging and use the how is that a problem, it starts to push more of the dirt away, more of the sand away. So
mm-hmm,
you start to see what that knuckle is actually attached to and what kind of
sure,
beast or animal or monster is underneath, right? And then when you do that, it's not one, it's not as scary anymore because now you see it all. And then you could decide what you want to do with that, right? Do you
yeah.
want to excavate that, or do you want to just leave it there and cover back up so that next time someone steps on the landmine, you get triggered again? Right?
Yeah. And by the way, especially when we were talking off cameras about how society seems to have gone crazy, and it's like you have two sides just attacking each other and being triggered by each other, and it's almost like, well, your if I acknowledge your pain, or if I acknowledge your ideas, then I'm diminishing my pain and diminishing my idea. I think that people get triggered a lot of that. So I do
Mm-hmm.
believe that with this exercise, I'm sure that those who are on both radical ends are not going to even listen to it or even do it. But one of the most liberating things is to dissolve most of the triggers, because
Mm-hmm.
then it's a much happier and joyful way to live life.
Oh, I love
It-
that you're saying that.
okay.
It's because most of us unintentionally force the people in our lives to learn how to navigate our own minefield of triggers. The only problem is, unlike real minefields with mines, landmines in them, once you trigger a mine, it blows up. There's no more trigger there. Human beings, our minefields, we get triggered, then we reset the trigger, unless
Yeah,
we
it's like,
let it go. And over time, especially in the dynamic of relationships, what typically happens is both parties learn how to navigate that minefield without stepping on any triggers. And that's where resentment builds. That's where walking on eggshells, high stress of just being in the dynamic of existing with another human being when you learn about certain triggers that are in the minefield. So our responsibility individually is the more landmines that we diffuse and remove from our world, the less likely any human being can step on and trigger our triggers. Because when we get pissed off and we go off on somebody, they're not the cause. They just stepped on a trigger that you already had, and they became a metaphor of what you already know to be pissed off about.
Yeah,
Right?
and yeah, I would still get triggered, but I would get triggered by the outside. I would get triggered in a sense that if I'm going to do something new, something that might be me taking a leap, I would get a lot of anxiety or fear or even overwhelm. I understand that because that is part of the expansion, but people can come to me. It's funny because every time that somebody wants to say, give me a constructive feedback or something, say, hey, you might want to hear this. You say, hey, I'm doing it out of place of love. Like, dude, you're fine. I mean, I can take it, right? Like, I
Yeah.
won't get triggered. I would feel every now and then the pull from your nervous system. Like, okay, I understand, but we're not going to overreact because I know where that comes from, and there's always going to be that lingering reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you practice these exercises of why I'm
Yeah.
getting triggered, then almost no one. People can say the most outrageous thing to you. As long
Yeah.
as they're not inflicting physical pain in you, then
Mm-hmm.
nothing should affect you, which once
Yeah.
again is like the best or one of the most best one of the best feelings in the world, but also kind of frustrating when you're talking to somebody who gets highly triggered. I'm like, man, I just cannot have a conversation with another
Yeah.
person without, as you
Yeah.
said, walking in the minefield and trying not to
Yeah.
trigger that.
Step on their step on their triggers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and and that's where when we get even more specific and we start to get more masterful, we can start to discern between what's a natural trigger for us and what is a nurtured trigger, right? A nurtured trigger is something that we learn to be trigger about even though it doesn't naturally trigger us, right? Like if I was to look at you and see another part of you, there is a natural trigger of, well, it feels like impatience, like the person walking slow, but it's the part of you that thrives in efficiency and very quickly understanding what the problem is and let's just fix it, right? Very efficient in that regard. That's another part of you that I see. And so when someone in the world doesn't operate that same way and they're taking their time and they're not being efficient and you're feeling that trigger of impatience coming up, that actually is a natural trigger for you. How you react though, if it is inappropriate reaction, then it's a nurtured reaction on top of the natural reaction. Now you've got a hybrid trigger. You've got a natural and nurture trigger on top of each other that over accentuates the response to the natural trigger.
Yeah, that is actually very interesting and fascinating because I never saw it that way and makes a ton of sense. What the story or the narrative I've built on top of it when that happens is like, okay, that's on me for believing or thinking the other person can be as fast or as efficient as me. That is unfair to the other person. Yeah, it
Right.
drives me crazy, sure, but
Right.
can I do anything about it? No, let go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's an empowered,
yeah.
understanding of yourself
Hmm.
and recognizing objectively, they're not me, I'm not them. That is mastery, right? And that's why you do what you do. A lot of people in the world don't have that. Not only are they naturally triggered, they make meaning of it. They start calling the person names. They start saying they're slow. They're saying they're stupid or whatever the case may be. And then that response then feeds a different thing and it starts to layer on and it becomes this huge, mountain out of an anthill when all it really is that you have a trait that they don't have and you're naturally just more efficient by nature. You have a natural propensity to see what is not working really quickly. It's a critical thinking part. It's a strategist. That other person doesn't have that. So they're not going to have the same type of accolades and abilities that you do. And that's what you've done is you recognize the distinction. It's like, well, that person is not me. So to expect them to interpret the situation or approach the situation the same as me is ludicrous, right? Because they're not me and I'm not them.
Yeah. I will say though, every now and then I'm kind of jealous of those kind of people because it seems like they're stress free. They're just living
Right?
their life. I'm like,
They have other stressors. Believe me, they have
true,
other stressors that
true, fair
grass is
enough.
not always greener.
Fair, fair. Yeah, but yeah, I'm like,
Yeah,
they seem to be so chill about it. But yeah, everyone
yeah,
has a different kind of
yeah,
a stressor for sure, for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
and pointing out to the names. One thing that I've come to realize when we get triggered and we call other people's names and say, "Well, you're doing this because of this, or because you're dumb, or because you're stupid," it creates a new narrative in the other person's head, or reinforces one that is highly debilitating, and it makes them feel less than. And the
Yeah.
moment that I
Mhm.
realize that, even no matter how frustrated I'm with someone,
Yeah.
I'm trying to control myself because I I I don't want to be the kind of person that destroys or contributes to your insecurities or your fears of yourself doubt, even if it's in a joking way. Sometimes we joke with other people and we
Hmm.
might touch something that might be sensitive to them. They might laugh about it, but deep inside they're reinforcing the story. Yes, see,
Right.
this is who I am. So I'm very, very, very careful with that because I realize the power that our words have.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh,
Incredible power.
100%. Especially if that part of you is
Mm,
very, it can be mean if it wants to. It's because it's very precise in how it approaches problems, right? And you're right. Not only does it affect them, but it also affects your perception of life as well. Because the power of words, who hears it first? You do. You do. You hear it before you even say it, and then you say it, reinforces it again. You think it, it's in your head. You say it, it double reinforces it. So not only is the receiving party getting affected, but you're reinforcing another perception in your head as well. So it's like a lose-lose situation when you do say something that way to somebody
yeah.
in a way that doesn't serve, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Wait, I do. I mean, I have one closing question. I do have to bring it back because
Yeah.
I probably crafted probably 15 questions, of which I only asked you like two or three because the rest we just went on a whole different journey, which I really, really, really enjoy. But it's like, damn, there's so much other information I just want to know or just
Uh-huh.
explore. But as a closing question, if you could leave listeners with one belief to uninstall from their brains and one truth to install, what would those be?
Yeah. So there's one belief that we work with our entire audience and we scientifically show everyone intrinsically, fundamentally, there is nothing wrong with anyone. When someone grows up and they're labeled as bad, evil, or whatever, that means society and culture and people and humanity as a whole, modern society, has failed them as human beings. And so, if any of you are hearing this and feel like there's something wrong, because I grew up that way thinking I needed to be fixed, I was getting bullied, I was getting made fun of, and I thought ultimately I'm the common denominator. There's something must be wrong with me. And I struggled with that for a long time. So that's one belief that I think, first and foremost, fundamentally, intrinsically, there's nothing wrong with you. The next belief that I think should be something to be embraced and to look forward to, and I'm so glad now that our technology is free because it used to be only to those who could afford it, and so now it's free, which is everybody is unique. And thus, everybody has a unique value proposition in this world, in this lifetime. Whether or not we invest into uncovering that and stepping into that and embodying that, completely up to you. It's not a requisite. All that I ask is that be the best human you can be, and the ripple effects of you just focusing on being the best human you can be, there's a quantum entanglement effect that will create ripple effects of change worldwide. It's like the butterfly effect, but in human form, right?
I love that. I love that, especially the belief to uninstall, because that has been somewhat of an obsession of mine as well. Of why does every human feel unworthy of something? They feel they're not good enough. worthy of love or success or connections or anything like that. Is something that is probably our biggest fear or our biggest pain, emotional pain. And once you understand that you are already enough, that you might just not be around with the right people, but then there's nothing wrong with you. You are who you are, period. And nothing, no one out there needs to add to your value. Your value comes from within. Things start changing. So I do love that a lot. Wait, loving having you here. Where can people find you? Where can people take the assessment, work with you, anything?
Yeah. So you can get the assessment from the App Store. You just
Mhm.
look up HumanOp, HumanOp, or you
Mhm.
can go take the web experience of it. So we have it on the web or on the app, and you can go to humanop.com. We serve both the business side and personal side. So just go to the appropriate menu to find the personal side if you're looking at for your own personal things, or if you want to learn to optimize your organization and human dynamics within your organization, you could look for our Maestro app, which is basically the B2B version, if you will, of our technology. And then I'm all over the social sphere. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, whatever, so I'm all over.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I'll add those to the show notes, YouTube description. And whenever I bring you back, we're going to definitely touch about burnout, human potential, and all of that. This episode was so fascinating because it diving into those unconscious belief and how do people become more aware, because I feel that once we even touch burnout or human potential, that would be, you would need this kind of information to understand better that, because once you understand the root,
Absolutely.
or once I see it, now I can see how those other
Mm-hmm.
things, whether it's is procrastination, burnout, or any other thing, is related to what we talked about today, which is, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. 100%.
Also, well, thank you for coming on the podcast, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.